Fairport native Sean McCarthy joins us to talk about growing up in Fairport, his road to success as a business founder, owner, operator, and life as a family man. Join us here on P-Town Profiles.
You have a good radio voice, I guess.
Well,
you know, a good podcast voice.
Yeah, me and like 1 million other podcasters.
Okay.
But so you're here today because this podcast is about like East Side leaders, whether they're civic, political, business, whatever.
Okay.
And here you are checking a bunch of boxes.
Here I is.
Yeah.
Am I a leader on the East Side? I don't know.
I don't know. You're on the Fairport High School Wall of Fame, right?
I am.
Ooh.
Well, that's, every time we go to, we went to a chorus concert last week at FHS for my fourth grader who's goes to North Side, and I walked by and there I was. And I pointed it out to Heather. She was very proud. I looked very good in the picture.
Really?
I did.
Amazing what they do with Photoshop.
Right.
So that's got to be like, how does your daughter feel about seeing your mug on the wall like that?
I think that they're just used to the kind of craziness they've grown up in. It's a cool thing. I mean, it's not something I expected, but it happened. That was 2019. That was right before the world shut down. That was like the last like kind of wild thing. We're like, wow, pre-COVID.
Oh,
yeah.
So Sean, Fairport guy, born and raised here.
Born and raised. Grew up on Aldwick Rise, which is off 250. Kind of we got the Arboretum behind us. If anyone knows that area, the Arboretum in the woods. Grew up in the same house and was in the same house on and off for the last couple of years till I was 25. Same house.
Right. So high school in Fairport, were you involved like in athletics or anything like that, or were you just like trying to?
No, I would say so. I was involved in athletics a bit as a, let's say, elementary student, but just passively. I think that my parents were, great parents, but they spent the money on my sister. My sister got braces. My sister went to dance, and my brother and I went and got dirty in the woods, or the things we did. In high school, no, kind of got into skateboarding, which I do consider to be a sport too. And once you kind of go down that road, sports were not a priority, and it was a silly like clickiness where it's like, the jocks were the jocks and we were the skater punks. And, but we all, for the most part got along, but I did not, I was not involved in sports in high school at all.
Right. So you get out of high school, and then what did you give college a try, or did you go right into the workforce?
I do. So, the path would be, well, I would backtrack. So high school, I remember at one point, I think in 11th or 10th grade, my dad, posed the question to me angrily, what's more important to you, making sure you get good grades or just hanging out with your friends after school? Which, of course, the answer was obvious to me. It was hang out with friends. So it's kind of funny to think now with what happened in the last 20 years and how I did in college, which was very good. But high school was a low priority, and I got by. It's comical now to look at the GPAs back then to be like, how the hell did I actually make it through? Smarts, yes. Attention span, no. More interested in skateboarding, girls, parties, and all of that. So post high school, I went to FLCC actually for a year.
Okay.
I'll say a year and maybe 1.5 months. Mm-hmm. The first 2 semesters, I think I excelled in some things, but not others. I just wasn't quite ready, not quite mature enough to like take the time to actually do what you should be doing as a student. I remember going into a science class. It was just an elective, mandatory elective or whatever, my first semester towards the end, and realizing that the final was that day. And I was so damn unplugged to what was going on today. I'm like, holy shit. And I just was like completely ill prepared. So I probably got, a 2 point whatever in that class. Fall semester of 1999, I was at FLCC for about 2 months, just took a couple courses, and I just decided I'm done, and I stopped. In my defense, I paid for it myself, not my parents. So it was my decision to walk away and kind of, forfeit the $1,200 I spent pointlessly. And that marked a point where I took like a full year off and worked for a company that's still what I do for a living now, setting up tents, doing rentals. And it was over that year where I was kind of like, okay, now I'm 19, I'm about to turn 20. What the hell am I doing here? And fall semester 2020, made the decision, well, I got to do something and make my parents proud. So I went to MCC, which that lasted 3 semesters, fall, spring, and then fall of 2001, right? Is that the math? Yeah, that's the math of my life.
I'll trust it.
Yeah. And that was like the first semester I actually was like trying for once, like really trying in school. And I can say that my entire time at MCC, I think I had a 3.97. I think there was like one course where I got like a 3.9. So we just
impressive.
Yeah. So like killed it and applied with obviously a really good GPA to University at Buffalo and some others. Ended up going to University at Buffalo, which is not that much of a challenge to get into. But when you have a 4.0, it makes it pretty easy. Where you just you just get in there. So that's. And then did UB. I feel like this is a long story for my college time here, but
it's all right.
UB for a semester and a half to finish it off, right? So technically it was the last 2 years of undergrad, but I cranked it out within 1.5 years, with the last semester being in Galway, Ireland, abroad.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, that makes sense. McCarthy and all.
Yeah.
So what was your major at?
So the major, the first, the total 4 years, which were kind of spread out over 5 years or 4.5.
No hurry.
Was history.
Oh.
And then I finished off doing undergrad work, which it wasn't a master's program. It was a education certification. My final semester at grad school was for social studies 7 through 12.
So you do the college thing, and then you find yourself back in
the rental world.
tent business,
Yeah, it's one of those
business?
things. It's the summer job that never went away. I tell people still, which this year is 26 years doing tents for a living. But so I would have finished graduate school in spring 2004, spring 2004. And then I was kind of done, and I was like, well, what next? So I was like...
Graduate, I'm sorry.
at UB, social studies education.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Okay, you already said that. Sorry.
And I went to California for a year, because why not? I had friends that lived in San Francisco. So I went there, kind of with not a real plan, but I knew that I just finished college and I did really good. So I'm like, I'm going to figure something out. Was considering doing a master's in San Francisco. And in the end, I kind of just stayed there for 11 months and had really good times. Worked for another rental company out there. Served drinks at a cocktail club at night. Made, I don't know, $1,300, $1,400 a week, which at that time I was
That's
like,
a lot of money then.
I'm killing it. I mean, it's still good money now, but I probably worked 85 hours a week. I worked during the day at the rental place, at night at the cocktail place, and then went to bed and got up at 7 a.m. and repeat. But it's fine, because I was built to work like that, and I kind of still am, not quite as much. But after a year, that ran its course, and I came back here in mid-2005. And then, of course, when I came back, I kept working for the rental place and debated if I was going to am I going to get a job teaching, am I not? Kind of went through that waffling for 9 months, did some substitute teaching, and then started dating a beautiful woman who's now my wife, who I would say about a year into dating or less suggested, as we talked about it, that I could start my own company, and that seemed like a good idea. So that's what I did.
So, Heather.
Yes.
Yeah. How many years have you been married now?
15.
15?
14. Yeah.
There seems to me, from what little I know, and I'm hearing here today, big influences in your life. Your parents. You kept referencing how you wanted to make something of yourself for your parents.
Well, I think that would tie into just because I just didn't give a shit for so many years in high school when they just tried to get me to like try harder. And it's kind of funny now because now as a parent, one of my kids is just 99% and just turnkey, and the other one, she requires a little more attention. So now I'm going through that on the other end, and but they're both very smart, just like I was, I think, smart like my brother and my sister were. So it was just a matter of like mentality and motivation, and I don't even think it was confidence because I think I was always confident. I just didn't care.
Right.
It was just low priority.
Right.
Especially when you got girls and skateboarding and, getting drunk on the weekend or maybe during the school week and partying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Studies? No, not doing that.
Yeah.
Well, it's not. I think a lot of people go through that.
Yeah.
Especially, it seems to me, especially entrepreneurial types, which you ended up being.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, I guess sorry to interrupt. But it got to a point where it was time to make people proud. Whether it was when I was in college or then after, and just having like ideas and saying, "Let's go with these ideas."
I don't care, but I want to make people proud. It's an interesting dichotomy.
Well, after not doing that for so many years,
right?
It's a good feeling.
Your dad's involved in business, yeah?
Yep.
And Heather is involved in business as well.
Yeah, she was more involved. From I say 2014 to 2017. But the owner of the company kept sexually harassing her, so she took an early retirement. She's involved. She's involved, and she was heavily with bookkeeping and dealing with me being obnoxious in the background, and micromanaging, which is a problem I might have. But I also got to a point where the bookkeeping and everything with our company, it became not possible to come in once or twice a week to do, and it got more complicated. And she's involved with so many other things in the community.
Yeah.
That it was just, yeah. So, but she still is involved in that. She's the inspiration and the reason why I do it every day. Yeah. I mean, the family as a whole is the reason for the fight and for our future.
Right. And I recognize that ever since I've known you. That's been the case.
Yeah. And my dad is, my dad's been semi-retired now for 18 years, I think is the math, maybe 17 years. Semi-retired meaning he worked 40 hours a week with me.
What was his gig before he joined the company?
He worked with Northwestern Mutual.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Insurance guy.
Yep.
So who do you believe are your key influences up to this point in your life? Obviously, Heather's one of them. Later in life, but prior to that, like when you were a kid, when you were in high school,
I would say that I didn't have I've always been a big fan of music and moved by a lot of artists, but I don't know if those influences, I view like my music life and that life kind of as, it's all kind of the same mentality, but also separate from business. I would say that the general like punk rock DIY, maybe to a cliche when we were younger, because it was like that's what was big in music for us then, and it still is for me now. But like DIY and just saying F it and just going for it. So just maybe not an individual person, but the overall mentality.
As in do it yourself.
Yeah, and just taking a risk and just being reckless to a certain extent, but reckless not in a bad way.
With a goal, not just flailing about.
Yeah, I'd say just from like a moral barometer of how to act in the world. My parents, obviously,
right.
Mom and my dad. My dad, big time.
Right.
Yeah.
So good parenting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see that with you and your kids, and you and Heather. You really are wonderful family people for sure.
Yep.
So I was looking at your website, and it talks about 2009, was it? 2000. When did you buy the van? And
So I worked for
full of stuff. And were you still working for someone else when you started moonlighting, or
no, not really.
did you just
no.
make a clean break and say, I'm doing this on my
No,
own?
it was a clean break. I had the idea that it was going to happen, but it was nothing other than an idea when I stopped. So I worked for a handful of companies for 8.5 years, basically. And when I went on my own, it was already like established it was going to happen, but it was definitely a clean break.
Okay.
And that was September of 2007.
Okay.
So like kind of like into the fall of that year, it's kind of weird to think back on, but there's always pivotal decisions I made with, $15,000 and some pretty high limits on credit cards for my age, which I maxed out. $20,000 was the amount on that, which is funny to think back on now because those credit cards, some of them I had like 0% interest on. It was all very strategic of my path to pay those down, and on a $20,000 balance on a couple cards took about 2 years to pay down that initial inventory. It's just funny to think now compared to what our company does every day and has to spend. But it took about 2 years to pay down $20,000. And I got a van that I financed, so I probably got the van in about October. So by like November, it was like we had a website, we had a warehouse space, we had a very small amount of inventory, a van, and I had a point of sale system on the computer and the ability to do credit card processing. So like I was like a thing. And setting up things like that then, even compared to now, even was a lot different. Like even setting up credit card processing and things are so easy now for small entrepreneurs, I think, compared to then. But I just went through the process. And I'm like, well, what do you do? I'm like, okay, I get insurance. What kind of insurance do I need? So you set all this stuff up, and then you're kind of like, and you have a DBA, and then you get a, employee identification number or employer identification, the EIN, which is a big thing in business. So then I'm kind of like, and I don't even have like an account yet, but I'm kind of like, okay, is that it? Is there anything else I'm supposed to do starting a business? Like what, do I need like a license or like, you just don't know what you don't know. But
so when did you incorporate?
Actually, I functioned as a DBA, I think, until like 2011 or 12. And the reason being was, an LLC protects you personally.
Right.
But I had nothing to protect. Like I like
you
even
had no
like
assets.
yeah, I mean,
after,
if all they can go after is the company assets, whether you're an LLC or you're a DBA, well, it didn't matter because that's all I had anyways. Like I had a car. After my first year, I bought a Honda Civic. That was my crowning achievement. Was I could now drive around in a real car as opposed to my van. I drove around a Ford Econoline van for a year, which after a year of that, I was ready to have a car again.
Were you married at that time?
No, no. So we made it through 3 seasons before we got married in December of 2010. Yeah,
2010.
Yeah, but so the LLC thing, it was right after we got married, I think, because even our first house on Whitney Road in Fairport, it was in Heather's name. So I literally had nothing. Like I didn't have anything of note probably until 2013, 14, 15, in that range. Right. So that's how long I waited to be in LLC. It was 3 or 4 years in.
The company has become a behemoth compared to the guy in the van when you started. And you've acquired other companies along the way.
Yep.
And absorbed them. Or are you still using their name brand as well?
No, that was a whole conversation.
You don't have
McCarthy's McCarthy, and in the end, we thought about combining names, but we didn't.
I think that's the right move. Yeah. You have a very strong brand. You've got a great reputation. You don't need to inherit the baggage of another brand, whatever it may be, or maybe nothing, but it is McCarthy for sure.
Yes.
So wait a minute. You said you and I first worked together when?
2010.
2010. So that's when we started Oktoberfest. Yeah.
Yes.
That was the year we started October.
Yep.
Was that the first gig we did, or did you do Canal Nights and Canal Days?
I think that I got in at Canal Days in 2009.
Right. That's when I met you then.
Yep.
Okay. So 2010, we started Oktoberfest with a tiny 40 by 80.
It was longer. It was long because I remember, I think it was like a 40 by 140 because I maxed out my biggest.
Really?
Yeah, I maxed out my biggest 40 wide ability. And it was comical because it was your first Oktoberfest.
Yeah.
It was one of the first bigger jobs at the time that I considered a big job.
Well, it was scary for us too, because we hadn't done one.
Yeah. And it was just a long,
We didn't know what we were going to draw.
it was a long, narrow tent. It was just a long, narrow
Yeah.
Oktoberfest.
I still have photos of it. It was like, wow. Yeah. And then we quickly grew.
Yeah. I mean, we maxed out that Fairport Junction parking lot for the most part.
Yeah. And then they put in those electric chargers, and that kind of truncated the length. And you guys have modified the layout since then.
Yes.
Which works, by the way. I went in 23 and was like,
It was good.
So, Sean, take us from 2010
Yep.
to today, because you guys have grown exponentially. You've acquired other businesses.
Yeah. Feel free to interrupt me, because this will be like
Well, this is about you. So
this will be like a 3 to 4 minute deal here, maybe 5 or 14-year deal. Yeah. So like 2010, our first Oktoberfest. So really it was just like year by year was a grind just to grow. I mean, I think I won't get into details on current day, numbers, but like to give everyone perspective on what it was like back then, I still have our revenue memorized almost every year. So 2010, we would have done $370,000 in business, of which maybe 9,000 of that was the Oktoberfest. 2011, we did 530, but then 2012, we did 930, right? So it was like, we had some of these years where we just, really jumped up. And I think 2013 is our first year we broke $1 million, but then like between 14 and 15, we jumped like exponentially, and all of a sudden we're at 2.8 million. So it just kind of like, I guess you could say like the proverbial like snowball effect. Like we just grew and grew and grew. And then we kind of we never hit a pinnacle, which was nice. Because it's always exciting when you're still growing, and when you become stagnant, that's when for me, that's when I kind of get stir crazy and things get boring. So 2015 to 2019, I would like categorize it as like steady, like good growth, like a big company. Like that was like when we'd finally like arrived as like a relevant, bigger player in what we do. We grew into Buffalo as well, because there was a demand there. We got a warehouse in Buffalo from 2015 to 2020, which we don't have a warehouse there anymore. That's a whole story. But we still do a lot of work in Buffalo, and might get a brick and mortar there again. Yeah, our lease was up March of 2020 in Buffalo, and as
timing was good.
Yeah, so we're just kind of like, we're not going to do a new lease right now. But anyhow, so yeah, it was like 5 years of steady growth, and we bought our first warehouse in 2015 after renting, for 7 years, whether I was initially renting for my father-in-law or then the lease was our own lease to pay in the same warehouse space. We bought a warehouse in Henrietta. That was our, forever home. And in 2017, we're like looking around like, okay, our forever home's too small. So I was definitely for a couple of years like, what are we going to do? But a really cool facility on Brighton Henrietta Town Line Road, like set back from the road. We love the property. So in late 2019, we added to we built a building attached to the current building. A lot happened in 4 months. In January of 2020, as my project was probably $600,000 or $700,000 in, and the contractors were kind of like, okay, well, it's time to start paying us, Sean. I was like, hey, Wells Fargo, where's this? Where are we at with this loan? And ironically, at the time, Wells Fargo was going through like some restructuring where they were getting out of certain types of commercial loans. So, being the ultimate risk taker, who starts a big construction project without money secured? Me. And I think it was like January 8th or 9th of 2020, I found out that our application had been declined, which made no sense where we were at financially. But obviously at the time, my heart dropped, and I was like, Sean, you idiot, you took the last risk that's going to bury you. So I was envisioning, some friends of mine now, but Frank and Salem Bergia of FSI, some Italian guys coming and breaking my legs. And we're kind of like, what the hell are we going to do here? And I went through a month of real stressful times ended up leaving our current bank and going to another bank because they would guarantee me, they'd give me this loan. And long story short, I went through the worst 30, 45 days of my life, like making sure our company was protected. In the end, of course, we got the loan, but at the time I was like, is there something I'm not understanding about our finances? So it all worked out. And then I'm like, thank God. And then March 14th, 2020 came. And I was like, okay, I just met my match and I came out on top again. And now I got no plays here. Like, I'm done. Like, you know,
that being COVID.
Being
just
COVID.
To be clear.
Yes.
Yeah. And same for our industry. Canal Days, Oktoberfest was like
everything.
And those festivals for Fairport obviously fund a lot of what goes on with not-for-profits in the community too. Right. So that was a scary time for everyone.
It was, yeah. And so even though anytime we made like the next big step, typically we would take the next big step in the winter, right, when we're not as busy. And obviously building this new building and moving into it was the next big step. So naturally we were like strapped. We already strapped cash-wise. Emotionally and mentally I was strapped from just going through the mortgage hell I went through that we got through. And then COVID happened, and it was like I was in a weird space where I had no plays because I extended everything I could into building the new building, which was a big leap. So like once COVID hit, I was like, I got no reserves. I got nothing here. And at that time, I probably had about 25 to 30 year-round employees. So, you know, we're getting through the home stretch of the winter with a new building, and I'm strapped, you know, for cash. And myself and one of my guys went to a meeting in Baltimore to maybe do tents for something at G8 Summit, Camp David, which never happened. And it was the same company that we did some work in D.C. for the 2017 inauguration. So we're kind of like going out there, but then we're like, everything's in the news. And we're like, dude, like, is this job going to happen or what's going on in the world? And it was, I think at that point it was March 12th of 2020. And we had the meeting, but really everyone at the meeting was kind of like, okay, it looks like they're going to go on as usual, which of course we all know now, nothing went on as usual. You know, a couple days later, we found that out. But we're sitting, slamming some beers at the BWI airport bar, probably at 9 o'clock at night. And it was Trump then. Yeah, Trump was president then. Came on the news and said, you know, all traffic from Europe and everywhere is shut down. And I was like, I looked at him and I said, dude, I'm going to lay everyone off tomorrow. And he's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, I was only, I would say 2 or 3 days ahead of the curve because over the weekend into Patty's Day is when it became obvious that everything was shutting down. But I kind of was a couple of days ahead of that. And so I kind of shocked everyone the next day when we got back that night. I slept like shit and went in and brought everyone, all 25 people into the office, and I laid off the entire company. Other than I kept 3 people where I'm like, you know, we're going to slug it out and we're going to see what happens here. So we spent like the first couple of weeks just, I had some people who were willing to come in even though they weren't getting paid, and I'm giving them cash. They're on unemployment. It's before unemployment got real good, you know, but everyone's on unemployment, and we're just calling like Adam Bello, senators, everyone, just to be like, if there's anything we can do for you. So really scary times, but I didn't even read the writing on the wall of what was going to happen. That I think it was March 14th was a Sunday. I was at the final like kids activity. It was like a Girl Scouts type thing with one of my daughters, and I got a call from my now good friend Andy Winter, who works with Rochester Regional Health, and he's like, they want to put up tents here for drive-through testing and all these things. And they want to do it tonight. And it was like 2:00 in the afternoon. But by then, right, so everyone's already laid off. There's only 4 of us. And I call everyone. And like some of the 4 of us were like office guys who like, they'd done tents in the past, but not anymore. And I'm like, everyone meet me at the warehouse at 2:30. And like, we just went there. We packed up trucks of stuff and just went and started building different configurations of tents that over the next week at the hospital took it down, moved it, all these crazy things happened. But the bottom line was we were like, okay, in the week that we just lost every job we had booked and we have nothing now, we at least got these tents up at the hospital that are bringing in 3,000 or 4,000 a week, which is like, even at our size.
At that time.
Well, like not enough to sustain though, but we were just like, can we just get enough stuff up in the month of March where we can sustain? And we did. But then it kind of kept going. Then in April, restaurants were getting creative and they were putting up tents out front or drive-thrus to pick up food. All these things are happening. So I'm kind of like, okay, now, if our burn rate what we need just to survive here with only 4 of us is, $40,000 a month, right? Just our absolute lowest. No nothing. Just we're paying mortgages. Actually, I think that was with like deferred mortgage because, you didn't have to pay your mortgage anymore. So it was just like, what do we need just to pay you guys and pay our genie and just at a base level function? It was like $30,000 or $40,000 a month. And we finally like got enough small work that we were bringing in $40,000 a month, which even at that time, that's a comical amount of money, but it worked. We're like, okay, we're going to make it through this. But then the calls kept coming for more stuff. And then I got the referral of a lifetime. I'm very involved in the industry, like at all the trade shows and everything. So a good friend down in New York City, he started building some test sites for New York State and said, hey, if you go upstate, you got to call my buddy Sean McCarthy up there. So that's what they did. And that was like the jackpot where we're like, okay, now we're back in business. And we built some state test sites that like saved us. So if we were to fast forward for 2 months or 2 years through COVID, it was like one thing after another, then jobs start coming back and we had these long-term test sites. So we went from like being scared that we were completely done for to like doing really, really well. And we brought everyone back by like May of 2020. So,
wow. So other than like a 2-3 month period of time.
Yeah, but by then some people opted not to come back because what was it? They were getting, the unemployment plus $600 a week. So some people were just like, I'm not going back. I'm like, so that was challenging. That's what, welfare can be a good and a very bad thing. And right. in that case, it was a bad thing because no one wanted to work because they were getting paid more by the government.
Right.
So, but it's just a wild few years with work at hospitals, work at, the Afghani refugee crisis that we ended up in New Jersey building tents. So all these things happened. And in winter of 21 into 22, that's when Bernie Puglisi, the owner of Nolan's Rental, called me and said he was thinking about selling. So after 7 months of pretty intense negotiations and butting heads and getting angry at each other and hugging each other and everything else that happens, we purchased Nolan's Rental end of July of 2022, which like the COVID work was amazing because that put us in a position to pull that deal off. And then now it's been 2.5 years of integrating the companies, having 2 locations and figuring out how to like operate with 2 locations logistically, culturally, and everything. And so we went from, like I said, 15, maybe 20, 25 year-round people when COVID first kicked off to, I think we had 82 people on payroll last week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great story. So you look back at that COVID era, what is that, a two-year period, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, it was.
How does that compare to 2-year periods? Well, obviously, as you were growing into 2020, but subsequently, I mean, was that one of the more lucrative periods of time in terms of billings for you guys?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was definitely like 2 ways of looking. It was lucrative, but it was also like it allowed us to do things we never did before. Well, first of all, like withdrawing $100,000 of cash from the bank and giving away $100,000 in Christmas bonuses on Christmas 2020 because we were doing so well. Like, now the downside of that is once you do that once, there's no turning back. And if you start giving people $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 bonuses 1 year, well, even when you're not gangbusters in 2024, that's kind of what the expectation is. But also, like, the inventory in the rental world costs a lot of money. And during COVID, we were able to say, well, there's this new flooring product we want to buy, a lot of flooring, and it's $250,000. And we were able to just write a check to buy, you know what I mean? And we never experienced that. Or the warehouse I bought initially that we did the addition to, that warehouse always needed a new roof at some point. It was just a matter of time. And if the whole ride we had during COVID never happened. I don't know if I would have gotten a new roof by now, but we thought nothing of, all right, $250,000 roof. Let's do it. Like, you know.
So those were essentially government contracts, or
It was a full mix, whether it was state government, federal government, like I said, local hospitals, local healthcare, local restaurants, everything. It was a real big mix of different things.
So you started hiring people back, those who were willing
Yes.
to give up the dole. Wow.
Yep.
So what's it been like since? We're 3 years out of it.
Yeah. It's good. Once things become status quo, I get bored pretty fast. And that's definitely this past year. That's been my crisis where now that we've combined as one company, obviously the growing pains of like combining the companies and getting everyone on the same page of my expectations for quality. And also like going through like a lot of the equipment we took on when we bought the company and getting rid of it and making everything be what I guess you could say the McCarthy quality. But that's like my worst nightmare is getting complaints or something dirty or not up to par going to like someone I know. Right.
Right.
So
Right.
it's like, and when you get the size, it's a lot of work just making sure everyone's going to be on the same page with the expectation, especially when there was not really that expectation for them for years. But it took a lot of time, but I feel like 2024 was like post-acquisition, like the best year where we really got our stride. And also we are a well-oiled machine, and the amount of work we can pull off now is mind-blowing.
You had a Buffalo location. You still service Buffalo.
Yes.
Syracuse.
Yep.
Basically everywhere upstate.
Yeah. A lot in the Finger Lakes, a lot like in Ithaca too.
And how about downstate?
Like strange things that have happened that I've always kind of scratched my head is, granted, I mean, Buffalo has a much larger population than Syracuse, but we've always like gotten dragged to Buffalo for things, in a good way. Like people want us there. We do a lot of work in Buffalo. Syracuse is like almost nothing. Almost nothing. For whatever reason. Further than that, we've done some jobs more towards like Cooperstown, not in a lot of years. And that was more of like fun. Like it's a great town, so we still love that. Like go out there and spend a night. But I geographically, I've kind of like, I'm okay with doing some crazy work out of the state if it comes along. But I mean, our focus would certainly be like closer to home is better.
Right.
So stay like from Syracuse to Niagara Falls in this
So that's
realm.
just in terms of operating overhead.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also, there's only, once we leave Greater Rochester, it only makes sense to go out for certain price point jobs. And that's it's a tough conversation when someone calls you in Buffalo and, hey, you did our friend's wedding and can you just come out here and do some chairs? And we have to say no and explain why, but it's like, but we just have to do what makes sense as a company.
Okay, I'm going to do something now. So I looked at your website. First of all, I want to say on the landing page, the copy, did Heather write that?
Yeah.
I knew it. When I read it, I was like, this is Heather. I heard her voice in the copy.
Yeah, it's good.
Great.
It's getting old now. We're going to
Yeah, I did notice
the website.
Yeah.
Oh, we have pictures. Yeah, there's pictures where our kids are 3 and 1. Our kids are now 12 and 10.
But literally, I read the copy and I'm like, that's Heather's voice.
Yeah.
I recognized it.
Oh, yeah.
And she does a beautiful job.
Yes.
So I went to the rental catalog. And so this is for people who, well, what does this mean? What do you do? Here's what they offer in the rental. Bear with me. Pole tent rentals, frame tent rentals, clear top tent rentals, sailcloth tent rentals, engineered structure tent rentals, double-decker tent rentals with a photograph of a double-decker in front of the Washington Monument, accessories, lighting, flooring, fan heater, generator, dance floors, staging, tables, farm tables, chairs and seating rentals. And this is not your fold up crap stuff. This is rigid, beautiful very banquet style stuff, linens and table covers, china and chargers, glassware, flatware, serving, bars, beverage, lounge and cocktail decor. Basically, you can create an entire environment. I think if you were closer to like a broadcast or movie center, you'd probably do a lot of propping and stuff. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Food service rentals, catering equipment, which like you're showing like a 6-burner gas stove here.
Yeah.
Trade show exposition, wedding accessories, and last but not least, mobile restroom trailers. So, I mean, this is a complete and total turnkey operation here.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, our shirts used to say tents, tables, chairs, and more. You could have just said that. It would have been a lot easier.
But that doesn't define it. I mean,
the more it keeps it
range
mystical.
and depth. Yeah. Holy cow. So no wonder you have 2 facilities, and you had to expand the one in Brighton.
Yeah.
Or is it Henrietta? It's on the town.
We're on the Henrietta side. Yeah.
Yeah. So a far cry from the van stuffed with stuff.
Yeah. But I knew the rental world. I felt like inside and out when I started, but I definitely had a lot to learn, but I knew a lot about it, and I knew the direction and the logical progression and what it would take, to be the relevant player as you need to hit all the bases, which is kind of weird because that's common in our market. But then there's, it's a lot different, say, in a place like LA or New York, where there's some companies where it's like the tent company does the tents, the flooring, the big infrastructure. And then there will be a separate company that specializes in the glassware and the china and all that, right?
Right.
There might be a separate company that's just the lounge furniture. We're just not that kind of market. People kind of want it all inclusive.
Right.
Yeah.
And they get it. I mean, I've worked with you for years, obviously, not in a couple of years, but, and I'm certainly aware of what you're capable of. But until I really drilled down there, I was like, oh my God, it's everything. Yeah. And your facility out in Webster.
Yep.
Had the opportunity to walk through that. What was it, last spring?
Yep. That was a big party.
Yeah, that was a big party.
Yeah.
Sean knows how to throw a party.
Yeah, I decided we were doing that 4.5 weeks before we did it.
Yeah, well, you're the guy to do it. That's for sure.
It was as elaborate as a wedding, and we planned it in 4.5 weeks.
So where do you see the industry going from here? I mean, do you see a further expansion in your offerings in terms of goods and materials and services? Or
I think as far as offerings, it's more of like we've kind of maxed out what, you offer in party rental. I mean, you can always keep going crazy and keep getting more lines of chairs, more lines of furniture. It's just a matter of like staying relevant, keep refreshing. Like we are like guilty to a T of just like, it's just like 3 to 5 years of something and it's out. And we just are constantly refreshing the equipment. Some things are just staple items where it's, a white folding chair is always going to be a white folding chair. It's not going to change, but you can't keep the same white folding chair for 12 years,
Right.
But yeah, like, so as far as expanding our offerings, I think it's more just staying with the time, staying fresh. As far as expanding our footprint, that remains unknown. I'm focused on some other ventures, obviously, right now.
Do you want to allude to that at this? You just did, but do you want to go a little deeper on what you're up to?
Yeah, we'll dive quick into so like other things I've done. So you mentioned restroom trailers, which that's true. We had a side company, Go Luxury Washroom Trailers, that we myself and 2 employees at the time bought in with me, and we started this company on the side. Which then, of course, COVID happened, and that really went well for me and the other 2 employees. We've since sold it, actually. We sold it to a company called Rentals to Go, which they function here and all over New York State, actually all over the country. Rock Holiday Village, I started with my 2 partners, Jenna and Kelly, I think the idea first came about March of 2018. So now I'm still involved in that, a little less than they are, just because it made for a very busy, stressful December. So there's that. There's some other things. Evolution Dome. There's these inflatable products that I sell and do rentals all around the country with my partner Brandon. That's a UK based company. Really cool inflatable structures that we have a few of those at the the Holiday Village that you can rent.
What's that called again?
Evolution Dome.
Evolution Dome. Okay.
Yep. So there's all that.
You can find that on your website?
Is it? I think it's on my, or you just go to evolutiondome.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but most recently, so like I said, in 2024, we kind of reached a good, not like really status quo, but we just reached a good equilibrium as combined companies. But then I also, for the first time ever, like wasn't that busy in the summer. Like and I still go on the road.
You personally? Or
yeah, me personally. Yeah.
Okay.
I go on the road all the time still, and that's where I love to be. People say I should be working on my company, not in it. And I don't care. I do both. I work on my company in the winter, but then in the summer, I like going on the road still. I'm 44 and I can still do it. But Johnny, who runs my whole operation, every day I was like, Johnny, where do you want me? He's like, I really don't need you. I mean, if you want to go here, you want to go there. And I'm like, God damn it, I miss feeling necessary. Like I became obsolete. And everyone's like, oh, well, that's the dream, isn't it? That you don't have to work every day. I'm like, I don't agree. So anyways, but over the winter, I was talking with Tommy Burnett from Iron Smoke, who did a festival, Hoochnanny Whiskey Festival in Geneseo last year. And they took a year off to do some expansion at Iron Smoke. And he was wanting to bring it back, but kind of go to the next level. And I said, I think I want to be involved. So it took a while, like talking through it. But we decided I'd be involved as a partner with Tommy. We would do it in August of 2025, and it's going to be at Camp Eastman in Irondequoit. And I cannot tell you any of the headliners right now. So that's top secret.
But basically, thematically, it's a whiskey-based.
Yeah.
I mean, everything. I'm sure you'll be serving everything there, but
yeah, we rebrand.
Food vendors, all of it.
Yeah, we're doing a press release. I say tomorrow, but that'll be irrelevant when this airs. But yeah, so whiskey festival first, but also a music festival.
With some big headliners you were telling me about.
Yes.
There's a tease.
Yep, there you go. And that'll be out soon. And it's a lot of work. So we're basically trying to get 50 distillers in there with a strong focus on New York State, but then also nationally, which we're doing. We're getting a lot to sign up already, which is exciting. So it's, bourbon's in right now. I mean, it's in for me. It's been in for me for 10 years though. But it's a tasting experience, and it's a chance to get with actual distillers, with the people that make these, that distill this product, that you can actually talk to them about their process, whether it's in Kentucky or somewhere in New York State. Music, major stage production, music, food, mini makers, local stage. We're doing some cool things with the local stage that we're finalizing the details on, that we're going to announce. That
So going to be more than one stage, a headliner stage and a local stage?
Yep.
Oh, that's neat.
And we're working on, even though beer tastings, I feel like we're probably a little overdone in the last 10 years, but an important component we're working on, don't quote me, potentially including the beer tasting option for free for all the patrons, whereas the whiskey tasting, there will be a premium you pay with that, not a high premium, but you pay for that. But we're trying to do the beer tasting included for everyone. So we'll have a large structure tent facility for the tasting, multiple tasting experiences, sit down symposiums, speaking engagements with the who's who in the distilling world, different. One hidden speakeasy, quote unquote, just a fun little things like trying to create a festival that, because of the infrastructure I have with McCarthy Tents and Events, just like with the Holiday Village, we're kind of able to create festivals in the first year where it's like people walk in like, how the hell did this happen in year one? Which obviously Hoochnanny, this is technically year two, but year one within Rochester, we have the ability to go over the top from the get-go because of the backbone of McCarthy Tents and Events. So that's our goal, is to have people marvel at what we create, because by the time the festival happens, it will have been my prime focus in life for 11 months straight. So,
right. The original Hoochnanny was 2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
Two years ago?
It was in October of 23.
Okay.
Yep.
Right. So that's pretty exciting news.
Yes.
Congrats. I know you guys have been wrestling with the concept for a while now, and it looks like it's going to come to fruition. So
yeah,
I would love to have you and Tommy come back and talk about that when you're ready. Probably closer to the spring, I would imagine.
Yep, we can do that.
But that would be fun to do. So, speaking of tents and Camp Eastman, is there a story about the old Irondequoit Oktoberfest? Didn't you have a tent up there, like kind of permanently, and then COVID hit, and then a storm hit and trashed the tent?
That wasn't me. No,
that wasn't you. That was somebody else. Okay.
No, another company that they're not around anymore. I think they kind of just.
I think COVID.
I think COVID. Yeah, a lot of people were just kind of like, well, that was a good. Just like how we didn't renew our lease in March of 2020. It was just a good point to throw in the towel. Yeah, for whatever reason, the Oktoberfest was there for many, many years.
Yeah.
And pre-COVID, the tent was left up for whatever reason for months and months and months after Oktoberfest, and it collapsed during the first snowfall, which of course that's obviously going to happen. But then, I don't know. I talked to Irondequoit about them wanting to maybe bring it back someday, because obviously we're building substantial inventory within the park, and it's a cool park. I mean, it's like got this old school feel to it.
Yeah,
a lot of parking in the back. A lot, they're going to open up the soccer fields for parking, so you can get about 2,000 cars back there. I don't know. We went all around Monroe County, and when we came to realize, like, when you're trying to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish, which is a cool festival that 6,000 to 7,000 people could be there in a day and be very comfortable. When you really think about it, right? Like, you got Highland Park downtown, but it's not really conducive to like large crowds or a big concert viewing area where you're trying to book bands that you would hope, and we hope that a few thousand people would want to be standing watching those bands. Highland Park, although I love it, it's a tough place with all the hills and all the nooks and crannies to manage a festival site, to build out a festival site. Parcel 5, you can only get about 3,000 to 4,000 people. So we were just kind of like, where do we go? I mean, we looked at even the town of Perinton, but everything had its challenges. And there you're limited to 3,000 people. It'd be really cool there, but there's not enough parking. So then you got to figure out how to get people in there. And it's also like, we're good friends with the guys from Fairport Music Fest. So we're like, if we're doing this thing, this year's August 8th, 9th, and 10th, well, then you got Fairport Music Fest 2 weeks later. So it's like, respect the other well-established things that are happening, and build something on our own in an area where no one else is. So there's no stepping on toes. We worked diligently to be like, what other festivals are this weekend that we're not thinking of? And that's why we targeted that weekend, because it seemed like there was no overlap.
Well, I think there's also festival burnout that happens, especially because we have such a limited outdoor season here.
Yes.
When we were considering a festival to do, Oktoberfest made a lot of sense because it would wrap up the festival season.
Right.
And wouldn't step on anyone else's toes. So.
Yep.
And Fairport's kind of blocked out. I mean, you've got Canal Days, Music Fest, Oktoberfest, and then a hell of a summer season on the canal there. It's just, you can only do so much.
Right.
Camp Eastman has been underutilized, I think, since Oktoberfest
100%
ceased. So, and we were regulars. My son, who worked for you for a few summers when he was going to college, came across a photo the other day from must have been mid-90s. He's on my shoulders. We're at Oktoberfest.
In Irondequoit.
Yeah. Back in the day.
It's a cool, cozy, quaint park. You feel like, and the interesting thing too is it's outside of the city, but not that far outside. So I think it's just presenting the concept and convincing people it's not far away, right? Geneseo's far away. Camp Eastman's not far away. And I think a lot of people are like, where the heck is this or whatever? But when we are booking who we're booking, whether it's distillers or artists, there's going to be the interest to say, well, I don't know where the heck Camp Eastman is, but I'm going to go check it out. And I think people will be like, this is really cool here. Yeah. We're also like a place that's, we're a city, we're on the water. We're on a major, like, it's funny to think now that, like, Rochester, like, think if it was just built right on the water. It would have such a different feel if we were built right on Lake Ontario.
Right.
But a lot of people don't even know, like, they don't even think about that we're a lake city, right? Like, I'll give you an example is I met my buddy Paul. He's from Ireland, but he in 2010-11 came here for a few months, then lived in New York City for a while illegally, and well, he just didn't leave.
You aliens.
Yeah. He'd get thrown out now, but I met him in New York City because we went to a concert, so he flew in back in July, and then we flew to Rochester where we spent a week together. And we're flying to Rochester, and the way they came in, they did the the pass over Webster and the Bay, and then over the lake. It's a common route we go to fly in.
Yeah.
And he's like, "What is that?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, we're on the ocean, are we? I'm like, "No." I'm like, "That's Lake Ontario." And he lived here for 3 months, and he was like, "I didn't know that Rochester was on a lake." Like, you know what I mean? Like a lot of people here, no one goes to the lake, or it's
and they hear
crazy
about the Great Lakes, they don't realize how great they are. And Ontario's not the largest,
right,
by any stretch.
And they're massive.
Yeah, it's a real blessing. That, and then the Finger Lakes. That was down there this weekend.
So it's a cool drive in, right? You drive in down Lakeshore, and it's a lot, just an area that like a lot of people haven't been to, but I think they're going to like it.
Yeah, well, it's kind of neat for me to sit here and talk to you today about stuff we were basically, I was founding a festival at the same time you were founding a company.
Correct.
And the arc of both has been upward. I mean, almost continually, even through COVID. And so, that's like the foundation of our relationship. And I'm really thrilled that what you guys are doing with the new home you're building and all that. That's really exciting.
Yeah.
I was a kick the day you called me up and said, "Grab 2 beers and meet me out front." I hopped in your car and we went over and checked it out.
Well, we want to make. I mean, we're trying to build a house that we're happy at. That gives us the vibe that when we stay at the lake, we're like, "This is so cool here." So we're trying to build a house that kind of gives us that feeling too of like, this is so amazing to be living in this space. But also something that, like, for Fairport, that people are like, it's just a nice looking add-on to people's walk on the canal, and something that Fairport can be proud of. I mean, it's cool. Like, it's nice to be in nice towns with nice houses and nice eateries, and that's just part of being a good steward of your community.
Yeah, well, that you've been, and I appreciate your support over the years. Because you've definitely helped the festivals, with friendly pricing and things when we wanted to stretch a little bit, and you worked with us to make that happen. So I definitely appreciate that too. I appreciate your time today.
Absolutely.
Say hi to Heather for me.
I can do that.
All right.